All right, so this is chapter 12 on stress, health, and coping. And based on everything that's going on right now, this is the probably most appropriate chapter, or really great that we're actually going over this chapter during this time. All right, so let's jump into it. Stress. So you definitely need to be familiar with how stress is defined. We're going to go over the cognitive appraisal model of stress in just a second, but it's some key words I want you to be familiar with as it relates to how stress is defined. So stress, negative emotional state occurring in response to events that are perceived. That's the key word. I always kind of focus on for students is perception. Um, Stress is all about our perception of how something is going to affect us or how much control we have over the situation. So here it says perceived as taxing or exceeding a person's resources or ability to cope. So for instance, to give you an example all about our perception with stress. If, let's say, you received a power bill that was $400, okay, and it said it was due by tomorrow. Now, for people that may not have, let's say you only have $500 to get you through the rest of the month, but yet you have a power bill that's really like let's say it's a disconnection notice that says we need $400 or $450 by tomorrow. And if we don't get that $450 or $400 by tomorrow, your power is going to be turned off, shut off, okay? And that's your home, and you need electricity and power for your home. You have children, and even if you didn't have children, electricity and power is very valuable to us, and it's a necessity. Now, a person that only has, let's say, $600 or $500, that could be a perception of a very stressful situation. They're going to perceive it very differently than if I had a person that has $8,000, $5,000, $6,000, $2,000, $3,000. They're not going to perceive that as stressful as the person that does not have enough resources to continue to cope with that situation. So that same bill, it doesn't change the situation, but that person's availability or ability to have that resource is going to be perceived very differently in that one same situation because one has the adequate resources and one doesn't. And so it's all about perception in a stressful situation. That's why one person may stress over a situation versus the other. One student may get, and even let's relate it to academics. If a student makes a 70 on a test or a 65 on an exam, they may be upset about it, but let's say they have an A average. Okay, let's say they have a 98 average. They make a 65 on one exam, and they have 10 other exams to take, or 3 other exams to take. Let me not exceed it to 10. 3 other exams to take. Then they may not perceive that as a stressful situation, whereas I have a person that has let's say a 50 test average, and they're getting a 65, and they only have 3 more tests. They're going to perceive that as a little bit more stressful situation. They may start considering withdrawing because they're like, hey, I'm not doing any better. Same situation, 2 different people, and their perception of how that could be very different. So again, a key factor about stress is perception. How you perceive that situation based on what your situation is. All right, cognitive appraisal model of stress. Anytime you see the term cognitive, and I know I repeated that, it's all about thought processes, mental processes. So how we appraise stress. So this is a model, just FYI, this is a model that emphasizes the role of an individual's mental thought processing, appraisal of event and situations, and other resources that they have available to deal with it. It's pretty much a definition of stress, though, to be honest with you. So that's why I tell students to just focus on the definition of stress. All right, health psychologist, and let me move that up so you all can see it. Definitely want you to be familiar with what they do. Their focus is how our biological makeup, our actions, that's the behavioral part, and social factors such as our society influence our overall health, any illnesses that may occur, the type of treatments that we need, and any other health related behaviors, because those all play factors in our health. Okay. Biologically, you could have some issues that make you more susceptible to infections and sickness and illness and things like that. But society plays a part on it too. And a part of our society is stress. We deal with stressful situations because we're dealing with everything in society. And so if a person is under stress, as we're going to find out, if a person is under stress, they are more likely to get sick or be sicker for a longer period of time because stress suppresses our immune system. So health psychologists kind of focus on how we're going to promote healthy behaviors so that we stay healthy longer, because it definitely affects our body. All right, so we talked about stress, we talked about health psychologists. Stressors. These are the things, the events that are perceived, again, you see that word because it's all about perception, as harmful, threatening, or challenging. Now, we have all types of stressors. We have categories of stressors. So stressors could be large-scale events, daily hassles, as we'll see, and then life-changing events. So here you see the social readjustment rating scale. And this is something that I wanted to share with you all, just so you all can have an idea about it. And if you wanted to, you can find a free copy online, and you can actually take the assessment. Not very long at all. You'll take the longest probably completing a calculation to determine where do you fall as far as your level of stress. So what it is a scale that contains 43 life events that have been assigned a numeric rating of life changes, units of relative impact. How impactful would this event be? Will give that event the number, the numerical kind of scale. And so let's take a look at it. All right, where is it? Nope. There we go. All right. So here is our social readjustment rating scale. So as you can see, these are the 43 events, okay? So at the very top, death of a spouse, that gets the highest point value, okay? And then it just kind of declines in the point value as it gets closer to the end of the scale. Divorce, 73. Marital separation, 65. Marriage, 50. Now, some of you may look at this scale and say, hey, some of these events I don't think, or you wouldn't perceive it as necessarily being a stressor, because when we think of stressful things, we tend to think of them as a negative, automatically something that's bad. But good things, positive things can be stressful too, because challenge can be perceived as stress. A person getting accepted into school and actually starting a new school or beginning college, that's a great thing. It's ultimately supposed to help a person and set their life up, for what their future goals are, but it can be stressful because it's a change to their life. Okay. Getting a new job could be a wonderful thing. Could be the dream job you've always wanted, but it's different. So that is stress. That's a stress-related situation. Pregnancy. People may want to have a child, may have planned for that child. And typically we look at it as a positive, but it's change. Will I be a good parent? Will I have the amount of resources that I need for my child, for myself? What are some health related issues that could occur? Or I just don't, I'm a first time parent. I have no clue of what I'm doing. So it varies, but it gets us to change our mindset of thinking that every event that is causing you stress or could cause you stress is negative. It's not. It could be great things, but it's change. And so if you complete the scale and you tally up your score, this tells you where you fall as far as how stressed you are. Now, if you have 150 points or less, you have a low amount of life changes, and so you're less likely to have a health issue related to stress. Okay, that's what they're talking about, stress induced, stress causing. So you're less likely to have a stress causing health breakdown. 150 to 300 points, which is kind of your mid range, implies that about you have a 50% chance that you could have a major health breakdown in the next 2 years. And then 300 points or more raises your odds to 80%, according to the Holmes Rate Ross scale statistical prediction model. If you're falling in this scale, you're more likely to have some type of stress related illness. Okay, those stress related illnesses could range from heart attack, stroke, migraines, gastrointestinal issues, because ulcers. Stress can affect the way our body operates in so many different ways. And so we all deal with stress differently. Some people sleep when they're stressed. Some people develop insomnia when they stress. So just wanted you all to get an idea of the scale, and it's very interesting. I've done the scale many times, and I've done it at different points in my life. And I'll probably do it maybe this week. Maybe I'll do it today, just to see where I am versus where I was maybe last semester. But you have to do some things. If you're trying to decrease and you see that you're at 300 points or more, you have to focus on the things that are causing you the most stress. And then you just have to scale back with what's in your power. I know it's easier said than done, but that's the only way you can adjust your scores. All right, so large scale events, as I said, as it relates to stressors, would be kind of the catastrophic events. So it could be like what we're going through right now, the epidemic. It could also be like Hurricane Katrina, natural disasters. Those could be like large scale events, tornadoes, things of that nature. And then the life changing events would be marriage, would be death, could also be the changing changes in a person's health. So a person that was healthy otherwise has been diagnosed with an illness that changes either their lifespan or changes how the family, how that person operates. So a person that may be going through chemo, breast cancer, or a person that may have MS that needs additional services may not be able to continue to work, or things of that nature. Those would be those life-changing. And then we have daily hassles. And so that's going to come up in just a second. Those are the little everyday things that annoy us and cause us stress, such as completing homework and going to work and doing chores in the house and things of that nature. Those are our daily hassles. So we'll see that in just a second. But I didn't want to scale over, kind of brush over the large scale events and life-changing events, because those are important as well as it relates to stressors. All right, so we're talking about stress. You have to talk about trauma, okay? Traumatic events or situations that are negative, severe, and far beyond our normal expectations for everyday life or life events. How a person labels an event as traumatic it's also based on that person's perception. So, for instance, a person can get into a car accident and have a total loss, but they're otherwise healthy. That person can be traumatized from that and can develop PTSD, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Another traumatic event could be a divorce. We know it is a life-changing event, but if a person perceives that as exceeding far beyond something that they can handle, that can be labeled as a traumatic event. It is not just related to or affiliated with military and a person going to war. It is not just that. A lot of times we used to focus on that when we first kind of started having conversations about PTSD. It was automatically associated with a military affiliation and war related. And it's not just that. It could be from the things that I mentioned. It could definitely be related to war for sure. But it could also be related to, you see PTSD with people that have experienced trauma, sexual trauma, physical abuse, physical trauma, things of that nature. Those individuals can also have PTSD. So those are or have or not necessarily develop PTSD, but can be labeled as traumatic events because it's based on that person's perception of how traumatizing it is for their life. All right, when traumas are intense or repeated, some psychologically vulnerable people may develop PTSD. And we're going to talk more about PTSD when we go into psychological disorders in chapter 13. So that'll be coming up very soon. Psychologically vulnerable people, okay? It depends on where that person is and how that person perceives and deals with stress of how they may develop PTSD. Just because you may have a traumatizing event does not mean you're going to develop PTSD. I almost drowned when I think I was like 3. I think I was 3 years old, 3 or 4. I don't have PTSD from it, but it was a traumatic event. Doesn't mean that I'm one of the most, that I'm not going to say most strong people, but that doesn't mean that I'm a person that's not vulnerable to it. I just wasn't at the time. Okay, but who's to say something else could happen in the future that wouldn't cause me to develop that? It just depends on the intensity. It depends on how the person perceives it and kind of the events that happen afterwards. Because some people can heal from PTSD. Many people can heal from PTSD. But we'll talk about it a bit more in disorders. All right. So next up, the daily hassles. Just like what I was talking to you all about. Work-related, school-related. It could be traffic. That could cause us stress. Those are the things we deal with every single day. Those are the daily stressors. Daily hassles are also called daily stressors. All right. Examples. They've given you examples here. Concerned about weight, concerned about the health of family member, not enough money for housing, increased workload, thinking about your future, fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or just spouse in general. Just those examples there. To me, it's more so questions than examples, but I gave you some examples anyway. All right. Work stress and burnout. That's very real. Burnout, it's very real. So it's always something to definitely be aware of. It's not something we can always do anything about, but burnout is absolutely real. I remember being in a position that affected my health greatly, and it was because it was a stressful position, just because of the nature of it and how much responsibility it entailed. I never have liked to be in a position where my decision determines a person's ultimate future. And I know that sounds crazy as a parent because that's what parents do. But man, it was a really difficult place to be. I definitely had to be one of those. I was one of those people that I had to be 100% certain. I didn't take it lightly, and because I didn't take it lightly with my position, and I did very well in the position, and I didn't affect people's future in a negatively and incorrectly. But that was a very stressful position to be in. And I was in that position for 3 years, but it affected my health greatly. That was when I kind of first developed insomnia, anxiety, all types of things. It definitely affected my health, but it was because I wanted to make sure without a shadow of a doubt that I was correct in making decisions about another person's future. So I definitely got burned out in that position. When 3 years hit, I was pretty much burned out at that point. All right, so I had to get out of that because it wasn't healthy. It really wasn't physically healthy, mentally healthy for me either anymore. So, when you can make those adjustments, definitely do so because it affects you in your lifespan. All right, social and cultural sources of stress. I want to talk about chronic stress. Chronic stress is stress that is continuously occurring. Okay, it's almost like you can never get from under it, or you're under that type of stress for a long period of time, an extended period of time. A lot of chronic stress is associated. That's true. That's factual with lower SES or socioeconomic status and poor physical health. So a chronic stress could be like if a person was living in poverty, and let's say they're living in an impoverished neighborhood. Some things may occur in an impoverished neighborhood. As we know, that's just reality of the situation. It could be drug sales, it could be drug abuse, it could be violence, it could be a lack of resources. So many things that this person is having to deal with every single day of their lives. And so it definitely affects the lifespan, the person's mental health, and the person's physical health. Those individuals tend to be sick more often and stay sick for longer periods of time. Also, racism and discrimination are another source of chronic stress because it's continual. It never ends for some people, especially dealing or living in certain places. Those are chronic stressors. They are constantly discriminated. And if you think back to not even maybe 40, 50 years ago, a lot of our previous generations had to endure chronic stress because of racism or discrimination. And it's not just racism as far as just not with racism, but discrimination as far as race. It could be discrimination against females. It could be discrimination against gender. It could be discrimination against age. That's why we have ageism and things like that. If a person is constantly having to endure that, then that's forms of chronic stress as it relates to discrimination. Other types of stress that will fall into the social category would be stress of adapting to a new culture. You have individuals that have left a country or had to move for different reasons. That's stressful, having to always adapt. I always think of not just individuals that are coming from another country, because we tend to think of that as being very, very different, because it could be cultural changes and that person having to adapt to a new culture when that's a big shift from what they've been taught, what they know, and what's a part of their being and making as an individual. But even military people have to deal with adapting to new cultures, because we can be still in the Western society, but you can be moving from place to place, having to adapt and making friends. That's something that military families have to endure. Having language barriers. Those are very stressful situations, and we have cultural differences within cultures. So it's not just, from one country to the next. It could be from one state, one city, one college, one school to it varies. We have little cultures everywhere we go. So that's also the social aspect of it. And then it's called a culture of stress when you have to adapt to a new culture. Some effects, you're going to see this on your chapter 12 exam when it relates to how does stress affect the body. Okay, so stress can have an indirect effect or a direct effect. Some indirect effects of stress are not eating or sleeping properly. Direct effects could be us getting sick, ulcers, gastrointestinal issues, things like that. Those are direct physical effects. Heart attacks, strokes, those are direct effects on the body. All right, so Hans Selye developed the general adaptation model that shows us how stress is operating in our body. As you can see here, see what I was talking about with stomach ulcers. I'm going to show you a video, and here's the syndrome. This is how his theory works. We have the alarm phase, the resistance phase, and the exhaustion phase. So I'm going to play a video for you all to hear that gives some great examples, or a great example, I think, and shows you how the general adaptation syndrome works. So let's see, let me pull it up here.
Math and science, and our body's reaction to stress. Stress is the reaction of your body and mind to threatening, challenging, or disturbing events. Many things can act as stressors. For example, a snarling dog, or an argument with a friend. The first stage after you're exposed to stress is called the alarm stage. At this point, your body releases a chemical called adrenaline into your bloodstream. The adrenaline gives you a burst of energy and causes many other things to change in your body. The reactions caused by adrenaline are sometimes called the fight or flight response, because they prepare you to either fight the stressor or take flight and escape. During the fight or flight response, your body systems works together to respond to the stressor. The following things may happen. First, more blood goes to your brain. Your ability to hear increases. Sweating increases. Your muscles tense. Blood receives more energy-producing substances. The body cells release energy faster. Your pupils of your eyes widen and take in more light. Your heart rate increases and your digestive system slows down. All this in reaction to the stress, so that your body can either fight or flee. There we go. That's how we respond to stress. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math uploads a new math. Welcome to Moo Math.
Okay, so that was pretty quick and easy to kind of show you how the general adaptation works as far as the alarm phase, intense arousal, and it goes into talking about how this affects, if you read further into the textbook, how it affects the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. The alarm phase, the sympathetic nervous system, where it's like the fight or flight response, and then when we get to the exhaustion, the parasympathetic works in to calm us down so that we don't totally deplete our internal resources as far as it relates to the body. All right, and then the resistance is how our bodies adjust to the stressor that we're dealing with. So that's how the general adaptation syndrome works. All right, so again, you're going to see a question on your exam that's going to be related to how the immune system or how is it affects, or how does stress affect the immune system. And just to put it plain and simple, it suppresses the immune system. When we're stressed about something, it suppresses the immune system. Suppressing the immune system means that the immune system can't fight at its, let's say it's fighting at 100%. When it's fighting at 100%, it can fight off viruses, bacteria, infections, and things like that either quickly, and when we never see the effects of it, or we heal pretty quickly from whatever that we are being sick with. But if you're stressing, you're going to make yourself highly susceptible, which means you're making yourself more open to getting sick. Or if you were already going to get sick, you're going to stay sick longer. So that's how stress affects the immune system. Doesn't allow the immune system to work at 100%. So it can't fight off what it would have what it would have been able to fight off normally had you not been stressed. Okay. Psychoneuroimmunology, be familiar with that term. This is a field that focuses on how the nervous system and psychological processes affect the immune system. All right, so be familiar with that. Here it goes a little bit further into how it affects the immune system. Just continue to read there. Personal control, not really focused on the personal control. Optimism and pessimistic or pessimism are the different types of styles that we have as it relates to stress. Optimistic point of view or stress style is that we tend to look at things more with a positive outlook. Okay. Yes, I didn't do well on this exam, but I have a few other exams that I have to take, and I can work really hard to bring my grade up that way. Okay, that's the optimistic. Pessimistic, I got a bad grade on this exam. I'm probably going to get a bad grade on the future exams. I may as well just quit now. That's two different views, one situation. Worse outcome versus is trying to predict a better outcome. And those styles definitely affect your health as well, because when you have a pessimistic style, it starts affecting your health, because you become even deeper into kind of what you're stressing about, or a darker slump. All right. Just FYI with the emotions. Type A, Type B personalities really is more of a personality situation or term, but it goes into how we respond to situations. So I can kind of see why it's here. So Type A, and again, like I said, if you look this stuff up, you would be looking at personality types. It wouldn't fall into stress when you were looking it up if you went out into the web. So that's why you're going to hear me say personality versus behavior. But a type A personality or person, or the behaviors that a type A personality exhibits, are people that are, you would consider high strung. Okay. These are the people that are very time driven, time conscious, and tend to be more anxious and stressed out. And it's because it's almost like perfectionism that they expect from themselves, and they put the same pressures on other people. And so they just have a big blow up when things don't go according to their plan. Exaggerated sense of time urgency. 8 o'clock means 8 o'clock to them. So if you come or arrive at 8:01, they could be angry. And most likely they're going to be angry. See, 8 o'clock, a deadline of 8 o'clock to a type A person means that I need to have something done or be there 30 minutes to an hour before, because they make sure that they're on time. Okay. They tend to take on a lot. So that's what they're talking about here. We're trying to do more and more in less time. It kind of comes off as procrastination, but really the person just takes on way too much. General sense of hostility. They are aggressive because in their mind, their schedule should apply to everyone. So they will display anger, aggression, irritation, And these people tend to have heart attacks, heart disease, and stroke because strokes because they're very, very high strung, and it's all based in their head of how things should go because of the pressures that they put on themselves and that they put on other people that other people didn't ask them to put on them. Increases blood pressure. I used to be very, very type A. Um, you all would not like me if I was still the type A personality that I previously had. But when you have children and as you get older and life changes and things like that, you tend to adjust, or you'll have to adjust to some point or some degree, because people may just not want to be around you. And you don't tend to be very well liked or very well received. But in a type A's person's head, they really don't care because did it get the job done? Did they get the things accomplished? If they did, then so what? And I have a little bit of that still, but not to the degree that I used to. I always tell students, give the students an example. I go to church at 8 a.m. And when I was very, very stuck in my type A personality, I would leave my husband at home because he's very much a type B. And so I would leave him at home because I'm leaving at 7:30 to make sure that I'm at church at least by 7:45, okay, at the very latest, because it doesn't mean show up at 8. It means that's when it starts. To my husband, 8 means maybe 8:30, 8:15, but really does 8 mean 8? That's how type B people are. And so type A tend to want to be aggressive and display anger towards type B people. So yeah, that didn't tend to work for a very long time. But my husband didn't pay me any attention anyway. So it was like, hey, whatever, you'll relax. It'll be fine. It's no big deal. Type B people, more easygoing, relaxed, laid back. I love type B people. I can love them now. I used to dislike them very much. So it would make me very angry because, hey, it's no big thing. It's no big deal. It's not a problem. Relax. The world's not going to end. That's their take with everything. They tend to be, honestly, more happier people, and they're definitely more healthy as it relates to how stress affects them, because it really doesn't. So they don't tend to have health issues as it relates to blood pressure, heart disease, and things like that, because they just don't stress about things. So kind of envy type B people. They can just kind of go with the flow. Nothing bothers them. All right. Some factors. Here we're talking about factors that affect our health. Our how we deal with stress, really. And social support is a very, very big factor of how we perceive stress and how we deal with stress. So if a person doesn't have a social network, and that social network could be comprised of family, it could be comprised of friends, it can be comprised of church, classmates, whatever you've labeled as your social support system, definitely affects how you deal with stress. For people that don't have a support system, then they deal with stress very harshly because it's just them. But if you feel like you have or know you have a support system, then you tend to deal with things a little bit different. So if you go back to the example that I used with the power bill, and you say, hey, this is a person that may have $600 to last them for the rest of the month, and now they just got hit with a $400 or $450 power bill, and if they don't pay it, it's going to be turned off. But if a person has a support system and says, hey, that support system says, hey, I don't mind, helping you with that, stepping in, because, we want to work together with you and we don't want you that stressed, they may give them the resources, or they may give them part of the resources so that, that's a relief. That's a sigh of relief. They don't have to deal with that situation how they would have had to deal with it had they not had a support system. So it definitely plays a part. Even if they can't provide you resources as far as like financial resources, having a support system when you're dealing with a stressful situation of a person just being able to listen to you, even if you're going through something and they're just there. Man, that feels so much better than being alone. So social support is, sometimes I think it's underrated, but it plays a very huge part in how we deal with stress and stressful situations. All right, gender differences, just to sum this up, women tend to stress more, but they talk about it. We talk about stress more, things that provide, because it provides us comfort to talk about it. Men tend to internalize it, and when they internalize it, they become aggressive, but they internalize it because men have just, I'm not going to say generationally, but even men are fixers. So they tend to internalize it and try to focus on how they're going to fix it. Women, we want to fix it. We can fix it, not to minimize what a woman's ability, but we will talk about it to express what we're going through. Men don't tend to do that. All right. Here, tend and befriend is women, fight or flight. All right. That's why men tend to become aggressive with it. Here are some strategies that are effective and ineffective. I think it's good for students to, and people just in general, to focus on the effective and ineffective strategies, but sometimes really focus on the ineffective strategies, because you can think you're helping someone, but you really can cause a person more anguish, more anger, more stress because of how you think you're helping them. And the effective strategies just give you some really good pointers on how it can be helpful to a person. Giving advice that the person under stress has not requested. They just don't, sometimes people just want to talk to you and not hear what you have to say. You don't have to provide advice. They're not coming to you. Sometimes they're not coming to you as an expert. If they're not asking for it, don't give it. They just want you to listen. That's all. And that's a sigh of relief. Sometimes people say, thank you for just listening to me. So that's something to take into consideration. Saying I know exactly how you feel when you don't. Okay. When you're in a different situation than another person, you can't say that because you don't. If you even need to say anything, you may say, I'm sorry what you're going through. I could only imagine, how you feel, but I definitely don't know how you feel, but I'm here. Sometimes it's best to just hush, just be quiet and listen. Or this is one of the worst ones, talking about yourself or your own problems. You're just waiting for the person to shut up and then you start dumping on them. They didn't want to hear that. They didn't come to you for that. They have what's going on with them that they're going through. They don't need to hear about your problems. Minimizing the importance of the person's problem. Oh, that's not a big deal. I went through that before. You'll be just fine. Well, not to them at that time, okay? Making a joke or being overly cheerful, it's not appropriate, okay? Or offering your philosophical or religious interpretation. People don't want to hear that. Again, silence can sometimes be the best thing or best source of support, or just saying, I'm here. Just what you need to say, what you need to do. You just say it, I'm here. That's all they need. That's all they need. Just your ear. Okay? All right, coping, how we deal with the problems. That's what coping is, okay? Efforts to change circumstances or our interpretation of them to make them more favorable or less threatening, okay? And so we have two types of coping that I want you to focus on. It's going to be problem-focused coping and emotion-focused, not the confront of coping, okay? So problem-focused coping is focusing on how you're going to change or manage the stressful situation. So let's say you have a stressor such as, let's go back to our power bill, okay? You tend to leave your lights on all day long and everything running all day long, but yet you can't afford a $400 power bill. Guess what? You change that. You turn off the lights. You make some more economical changes that's going to be effective for you. Okay, that's how you can change that problem. Okay, for the future. Emotion focuses on how am I going to change how I deal with that situation that I really have no control or power over. So let's say if a person was having to deal with a family member getting a terminal disease. Are you coping if you're crying about the person, terminal disease every single day? No, that's really not emotion focused coping. But if you focus on the positive and say, okay, they have a terminal disease, but let's make some happy, positive memories. Let's do some things that's within their power. Let's do some things that's within my power and control, to make this the best possible outcome for this situation. That's how you deal with it. But people tend to go into denial, because that is a strategy. They just act like it's not happening. Distancing. You have people that I experienced that myself from my family when my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. A lot of her children distanced themselves from her. It wasn't that they didn't love their mother. It was that this was a very real different situation for them that they were not accustomed to and didn't know how to deal with at the time. And so because they couldn't manage those emotions and how their mother was different, they just went away. And so because they went away, it caused some things for her, some suffering for her, some temporary suffering for her. But it was what they had to do in order to tend to their own emotional needs. And that's really what emotion focused coping does, is you're tending to your needs. You seek out social support, talk to other people, positive reappraisal. Like I said, hey, what are some, positive memories we can create? This is the disease. Yes, it is. I can't change it, but what can I do to make this the best situation? And I think that's probably what I used with my grandmother. Now, negative religious coping, people, what they're talking about here is people being angry with God for whatever happened. It could be a death, it could be an illness, it could be a disease, and that's how they're coping with it. It's not effective. No one said it had to be, but that's how people deal. So those are some examples of how we use emotion-focused coping. And then minimizing the effects of stress, just FYI. Avoid or minimize the use of stimulants because it only magnifies what you're stressed out about. Exercise regularly. People underestimate, I'm one of those people that I'm talking about, underestimate the effects of exercise because it definitely minimizes stress. Get enough sleep. It's hard to sleep when you're stressed though. Even though I know that's a great suggestion, it's hard. And then practice a relaxation or meditation technique. Massages can be a really great thing. And meditation for sure, but massages, pretty great. Helping you deal with stress, or even like whatever, you can do music therapy. If you're a person that really responds to music therapy well. I listen to tranquil sounds and things like that because it calms the chaos. I call anxiety pretty much chaos in my head. And so it calms the chaos in my mind, or the anxiety that I'm going with. So that's a type of therapy that I utilize as well. So you got to do what works for you. But definitely take the steps to minimize the effects of stress. That's within your power, because I know some things are not within our power. So those are the things to consider for your minimizing stress. And don't forget to just take a look at the stress scale. Take it, see how you score on it, and things that are within your power, try to minimize them because it does affect your lifespan. And that concludes chapter 12.